Hey folks, how are you? It is Wednesday, the 14th of January, 2026. Hope you're all doing well. The war or the revolution in Iran is beginning, I guess you could say, or already now on its 18th day since, starting out as a bunch of protests and now turning into a revolution in some ways over the past few days, even over the past week, really, but really over the past few days, it's been kind of kicking off, especially since last Thursday night on the 8th and then the 9th, and then has progressed since then. And I still stick to my skepticism that this will not be a revolution that is won by holding hands and coming out in trickles that become slowly waves. We need to see, the people of Iran, I should say, need to see, 3 to 5 million people come out all at once across all the different cities to take over in all the places where the institutions are, the government institutions, and where all the arsenals are, all the stores of weapons that the IRGC has, and their headquarters as well. And they need to hold those places when they take them. And obviously, that's why getting the stores of weapons is incredibly important. Right now, the IRGC is doing everything it can to not only secure those facilities, but also to distribute among their soldiers quantities of arsenal to decentralize, essentially, and prepare for a possible insurgency if the dictatorship is in fact overthrown. And when it comes to the question of the overthrow, given all of the movements we are seeing, all the statements we're seeing by Trump and the U.S. military, and Netanyahu, and what Israel's military may or may not be doing, or what other Israeli uh, groups may be doing, and France and Britain and other countries who are contributing in their own ways, it becomes very obvious when you look at all the different factors, what are some of the potential dates for any kind of a strike. Hold on one second here. I need to mute for a second, and I'll be right back. I'll be right back. No one maybe let's start over. No? We'll continue it? Okay. We will continue it. I just need a minute here. Okay, folks, I'm back. So, as I said, what are the factors that are leading up to the potential ETA, potential date of any kind of action that would actually overthrow the Ayatollahs and the dictatorship, including the IRGC, which really runs Iran at this point? And you have to look at a whole lot of different things. First of all, there's the political factors. Internally in the United States, where they have to decide if they're going to do this or not, based on the impact it would have internally in the United States. Obviously, of course, first and foremost, as the situation in Iran, the people on the ground, they are the most important factor in this entire thing. Right? They're going to keep driving forward with this demand for change, no matter what the consequences are. And we've seen incredibly devastating rates of deaths reported anywhere. I've seen 2,000, 3,000, 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 people dead. It's really hard to get an exact count right now because, of course, the internet is still largely blacked out. Communications are still largely blacked out. This is all going exactly along with the playbook I told you guys was probably going to happen, unless we saw an overwhelming storm of people from the very beginning, which we did not see. And that gave the IRGC all the time to do exactly what they did, which again is exactly what I warned would happen. But that's where we are. Shalom, shalom. So there's the political consideration of the Iranian people, what they are going to do, what they're going to choose to do. There's the considerations of the U.S. and other countries, internally their politics, and then externally the politics that they have in terms of political and diplomatic relations they have with other countries, like countries in the Gulf states, who you would think, for the most part, if not all of them, would be supportive of the people in Iran overthrowing the Shia dictatorship, since most of them do not like that Shia dictatorship. However, we've seen signals from those very countries playing their political safety book, saying, oh, no, the U.S. shouldn't do anything because it could lead to bad situations, blah, blah, blah. So the dictatorships of the Gulf states, because that's what they are, even the peaceful ones, they are dictatorships. Even the ones that allow you to vote, if they have a king who makes the rules, that's a dictatorship, okay? Let's be clear. So they are saying, no, let the dictatorship stay in power. Well, what a surprise that one dictator would say, no, let that dictator stay in power, as long as he's not attacking me, right? So we're seeing that signal come from a bunch of people saying, no, you got to talk to the dictatorship in Iran, which is ridiculous. And so, of course, Trump's administration has said, yes, we've seen, offers from the Iranian dictatorship to talk with us, and we considered it, we're considering it. But then he's also come out later and said, well, since they're still killing innocent people, we're not going to be talking with them. So for now, people who are on the side of getting rid of the dictatorship have a little bit of hope that the U.S. will help, because he has said also multiple times, including yesterday, that quote-unquote help is on the way, whatever that means. So we have those two considerations. Then you also have the assets consideration. Where are the necessary military assets to actually, do this from a military point of view, if the U.S. wants to actually contribute in a way kinetically to get rid of the dictatorship, right? Because we can't just say we want to get rid of them. You have to actually get rid of them with kinetic force. And that means that you have to have various assets in play in theater, or at least relatively in theater, where they can do their thing from, right? So if it would just be another couple of attacks like bombing runs, well, then sure, they could just fly from the U.S. and do it. Nobody would notice until it's already done. But if they're going to do something a bit more traditional, because ousting the dictatorship is a whole lot different than hitting a couple of targets with about, a dozen bombs from a high altitude with stealth bombers, right? That's a very, very different situation. Even if you don't actually have to put any boots on the ground, or even if you only put like special forces on the ground for a few minutes or for a few hours to go in, do their thing and get out, it's still very different. You need to have all the logistical assets in place. and that is quite a lot, right? There's Navy, there's Air Force, there's ground troops, there's all kinds of different things you need to put in play and put in the right places. And yes, we've seen a lot of movements that could suggest that that might be happening for some days now. I don't want to get too into it in this particular video, but I can tell you that I've seen a lot of information from people who know a lot about this kind of thing. And there are definitely assets in motion, right? This is not happening without that being the case. So we've seen all kinds of reports of various assets appearing, disappearing, appearing, reappearing, disappearing, suddenly showing up in a place that people didn't expect that they would suddenly be. That's happening. They are lining up the pieces. Then there is also the weather factor, right? Right now, today, light snow in some places of Iran, and through the end of the week and the weekend, the weather is basically going to be cool or cold in some places, with some potential for some rains and some snows, and a little bit of clear skies in some places. That is going to have a major impact as well, because people will generally not feel as comfortable going out into massive protests when it's very cold. That doesn't necessarily stop them, but very often it does reduce the numbers. Another thing to consider is the moonlight, right? So there's a new moon on the 18th, which means on the 17th, basically no moon. 16th, 17th, very, very low moonlights. Even the 18th, very low moonlight with a new moon. Why does that matter? Well, because the US and other Western countries obviously have high-tech night vision for a lot of the forces that they might use, if not all of them, right, that they might use to do anything at night. Operations like this tend to happen first at night, but they tend to start at night, usually late at night, when there is no moonlight or very low moonlight at the intersection of four corners of a map. And if you know anything about navigation, you know what I mean. If you spent your life using Google Earth or Google Maps or Apple Maps, well, you probably don't know what I mean, but there you go. So there are a lot of factors to consider, right? I've just listed for you about 5 or 6 that are significant factors, right? Each of them has their own set of circumstances to consider. Right now, sometime between now and the 18th, is certainly a possibility, very high probability, that something could happen, but it would still take, probably, in my estimation, at least a couple more days, if not a few more days, to get the assets in place necessary, considering where all the assets have to come from and to where they have to go, and the kind of recon and targeting and everything else that they need to do in order to make this a reality that is very swift and very successful. So I would say the 17th or 18th are kind of golden dates that it could happen on at night. Of course, it could be delayed even further because of diplomacy and political stuff and other considerations, but mainly politics and diplomacy. In which case, we could be looking at anywhere from, the 21st to end of the month or even early into next month. But that really depends, again, on the momentum of the people, whether or not they keep up that momentum, whether or not they continue pushing forward, doing the necessary things to overthrow this regime. Because it's not just going to happen, like I said, by holding hands and singing Kumbaya, right? We're seeing the brave, courageous Iranian people stand up in the face of utter brutality. Again, to me, it's a shame that they didn't all get out there and do this all at once, because then they could have maybe overthrown the government while they still had telecoms, while they still had a lot of other things going for them. But it's the way it is, right? You fight with the army you have, not the one you want. So that's the perspective from Israel, from my perspective from Israel anyway. Right? We want this revolution to succeed. We want the people to overthrow that dictatorship because they are brutal and evil. And they are basically the main head of the snake cancer on the world right now when it comes to the organization that is spreading terrorism and hateful ideology around the world, which they sponsor. We need to see an end to that. And the faster we see an end to that, the better it will be for everybody. So that's my, for now, estimate. Obviously, it's dynamic. Yeah, these are not ironclad dates. Of course, you can look at things like the pizza index. If you know, you know. If you don't know, the pizza index is a remarkably accurate tool. It actually has been used since before there was a website or websites tracking it that basically tell you an indication of how many pizzas have been ordered from places near the Pentagon. And when you see a spike, as we've seen recently, it tells you something's happening. So, for example, there was a spike just yesterday, and we saw a significant amount of orders, but not enough for a full-blown action. And anyway, so that's another index you can look at if you're looking for that kind of information. Like and subscribe if you would, please. I'd really appreciate it. And I will see you guys in the next one. Probably coming very soon. Peace.